Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So, we have a Mars retrograde upon us for a few months, and I thought it would be a wonderful idea to do a little workshop on conflict resolution skills. I think that this is something everyone can benefit from, regardless if you're into astrology or not. Resolution is super important. You're going to need those skill sets in your workplace, in your home life, within friendships. So it is, a super important skill set that not many people have access to. So we're going to talk about why that might be today. And then we're going to talk about some basics in terms of conflict resolution, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper later into how to interact with people who might be narcissistic or very difficult people, and how your communication skills might alter from a person that you are friendly with or a coworker or somewhere where you have to keep it clean, keep it nice, keep it honest versus somebody who's not really living in their truth. And that can be really difficult to do. So I wanted to give some skill sets today, because conflict resolution isn't something we should fear. And so I called this talk Where Friction Meets Freedom, Break the Cycle of Conflict, because so many people do not resolve their conflicts because they don't have the tools at hand to communicate with other people and resolve conflict. So let's get into it. So today's workshop is about transforming how we approach conflict, not as something to fear, but as a gateway to deeper understanding, growth, and ultimately freedom. Conflict doesn't have to be the villain in our story, it can be the catalyst for change. And by the end of the session, you'll not only understand why you might feel stuck in repetitive conflict patterns, but you'll have practical tools to communicate effectively, even with the most challenging people. So let's begin by addressing something crucial: why many of us were not taught how to repair conflict in our families of origin. Okay. So, for many of us, repair, the ability to mend a relationship after a conflict, was not modeled growing up. So instead, we may have witnessed avoidance, stonewalling, or explosive arguments with no resolution. In my family, we like to brush things under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. So, this is often rooted in emotional immaturity, which is the inability to regulate one's emotions, to take accountability, or to see beyond one's immediate perspective. Emotional maturity can lead to behaviors like defensiveness, blame shifting, or shutting down in conflict. In some cases, we were raised by individuals with narcissistic tendencies, where conflict resolution wasn't about repair, but it was about control, winning, or avoiding shame altogether. So, narcissism thrives in environments where vulnerability is seen as weakness. So, authentic conversations and emotional repair get pushed aside. And the result of this is many of us grow up fearing conflict or associating it with chaos rather than seeing it as an opportunity for clarity and connection. But here is the truth, guys: conflict is inevitable, but dysfunction is optional. And that's something a lot of people do not want to hear. So, why not fear conflict? Conflict is simply the friction between two truths. It's not inherently destructive. In fact, it can be incredibly constructive when handled well. So, avoiding conflict may feel safe in the moment, but it creates a buildup of resentment, misunderstandings, and miscommunications over time. It's like ignoring a small leak until it becomes a freaking flood. When we embrace conflict as an opportunity, we can break out of the cycle of having to do the same fights over and over and over again. And this cycle often happens because we focus on surface level arguments rather than addressing unmet needs, fears, and the boundaries underneath. The key to moving forward is to break free from unproductive patterns by learning new tools and new perspectives. And here is the good news: you don't need the other person to change first. By shifting your approach, you can create enough space for new possibilities. Simply put, conflict is growth waiting to happen. Disagreements often surface when unmet needs or unspoken feelings arise. When these issues are addressed, they pave the way for greater clarity and for mutual understanding. So, identifying what truly matters to you and learning how to express it constructively is super important. Handling conflict requires emotional regulation, empathy, and the ability to communicate effectively under pressure. Each conflict is a chance to master patience and self awareness. When approached with respect and openness, conflict can build trust and intimacy by showing both partners that perspectives and emotions are truly valued. So let's talk about some conflict resolution secrets, shall we? One of the first issues that we run into with conflict resolution is how to even begin a conversation with the person we are in conflict with. So you may wish to say something like, "Hey, I've been thinking about what happened and I'd like to talk about it so we can both feel better about moving forward." Another way to start a conversation geared towards conflict resolution is simply saying, "I want to understand your perspective. Can we talk when you have some time?" These conversation starters create a narrative that we are intentionally trying to heal rather than to debate. There may be points in this conversation where we may need to take responsibility for our actions and the part that we play in the conflict. And so I want to touch on this for just a moment because every conflict that we are in requires us to take some form of responsibility. If we are in a conflict with another person, it doesn't matter how innocent we think that we are. There is some sort of conflict at hand that is showing us what we are responsible for. So, some helpful statements that take ownership of conflict are: looking back, I can see how my words may have hurt you. I want to take responsibility for that. Or I realize I might have contributed to this by, and then stating a specific action. And so I'm sorry for that. I didn't handle this situation the way I wanted to, and I'd like to try again. That's another way we can state that. If there's something I have done to upset you, I'd like to know so that I can make it right. That's another way we can have that conversation. Um, thank you for taking, or sorry, thank you for sharing how you feel. I can see now how my actions affected you. That's another way to take responsibility. So, the number one thing with any sort of conflict is taking responsibility. We play a role, no matter what role that might be, right? And, maybe this is bringing up a sore subject with somebody is not going to respond to it well. And that's not to say that you should not bring up that subject around that person, but that is the role that we're choosing to play. So we need to take responsibility of that for that. So say this is like a political debate with, I don't know, your family over Thanksgiving or something, right? Um, you know, it could be as small as, I take responsibility for bringing this up, but I think it's really insensitive how you don't care about XYZ. Even in that sentence, we are still taking responsibility. I think people get really agitated when we don't honor the role that we play in things. So taking responsibility is a way that we can be in equality, right? Um, we can stand and we can mirror taking responsibility for other people because sometimes other people have a hard time taking responsibility. And if we are ready to show them how to take responsibility for something, they may be more willing to take responsibility for the thing that we need to make them responsible for, right? So, the hidden secrets of conflict resolution often lie in the skills and the mindsets that aren't immediately obvious, but make a profound difference in diffusing tension and fostering understanding. People argue about what they want, but the secret is uncovering why they want it. Beneath rigid positions lie a deeper interest, needs, fears, desires, things that can create room for solutions if they are acknowledged. When emotions escalate, the instinct is to defend or attack. But replacing defensiveness with genuine curiosity, why did they see it this way, can dissolve hostility and invite collaboration. Often people want to feel heard more than they want solutions. So validating their emotions, things like, it sounds like you are really frustrated about this, can shift the tone and open a dialogue. You can acknowledge feelings without agreeing with someone's perspective as well. Conflict is often framed as us versus them. And so reframing it as us versus the problem fosters collaboration. Position yourself and the other person as a team working together towards a common goal. Conflicts are rarely about surface level issues. They're tied to deeper emotional triggers, past experiences, insecurities, or unmet needs. So, identifying your triggers can diffuse reactive cycles. So, something you might want to reflect on when you're in conflict with someone, what's the unmet need underlying this reaction? It is important to have the mindset of a negotiator rather than a fighter. Negotiators prioritize listening to the other party, not just for information, but to actually build rapport and actually understand their perspective. This helps in de escalating emotional tension and creating connection that fosters cooperation. Rather than focusing on the conflict itself, negotiators shift into the focus of finding solutions. So, this mindset helps in framing the conversation in terms of positive outcomes rather than blame or escalation. So, now we're going to talk about asking transformational questions. So, instead of arguing, ask questions that shift focus and encourage self reflection. So, some examples include, what's one thing that we can do differently moving forward? What would success look like for both of us? What are the outcomes that you would like to see in this situation, or what seems fair to you? So, now we're going to talk about some tools to communicate effectively, even with the most difficult people. So, let's talk first about navigating conflict with narcissistic people. Navigating conflict with narcissistic individuals can be uniquely challenging because their responses often center around control, self preservation, and emotional manipulation rather than mutual understanding or resolution. However, with the right tools, you can protect yourself, you can maintain the peace, and you can minimize the emotional toll. So, here are some strategies. Be kind. To reset the tone of a conversation, you can say something like, I see that you're trying to steer this conversation in a different direction. Let's stay focused on the issue at hand. Or you could say something like, it feels like you're making this about me instead of addressing the real problem. Let's stick to the facts. Another thing that we need to consider when dealing with narcissistic people is we really need to master emotional detachment. And this is not easy work. Narcissists often seek to provoke an emotional response to maintain some level of control over the dynamic. So practice staying calm. That might mean like doing like a 4-7-8 breath to reset your nervous system, taking a second away to just kind of de-escalate the situation. But trying to stay as calm as we can and detached, even when the other person escalates, is really going to be a winning strategy for us. Remember, their behavior is not a reflection of your worth, but of their unresolved issues and emotional maturity. In this case, not very mature. So, How to practice detachment. Visualize yourself as an observer, not a participant in their drama. Take deep breaths or mentally repeat a grounding phrase like, this is their reaction, not mine. Conflict cannot survive without your participation. Effective communication is a critical skill when dealing with challenging personalities as well. And this can mean adopting to various communication styles. Some individuals may need to be more direct, no nonsense conversations, while others may require a more diplomatic, softer approach. When the CIA actually investigates people with difficult personalities, they are actually known to practice active listening as well as mirroring the body language of the person at hand. So, mirroring is a great way to build rapport with difficult personalities. People are known, this can be a little manipulative to some people. So, if it doesn't resonate with you, and this is a tool that narcissists use all the time, you sit down at a table and your head's in your hands, and then they sit and they look at you and they put their head in their hands. It fosters that connection, even if it's a false illusion of connection. Sometimes that can be very helpful. Narcissistic individuals struggle with emotional accountability, so sharing your feelings may either be dismissed or weaponized. So instead, focus on factual statements. Instead of you hurt me when you said that, you can say something like, when you said, and then say the specific statement, it created a misunderstanding. Boundaries are also an important part of this. So, boundaries are crucial when dealing with narcissists. Be concise, be assertive without over explaining, as over explaining can invite pushback. So, you could say something like, I am not comfortable discussing this any further right now. I won't engage in conversations where I'm being disrespected or yelled at, and you can simply walk away. Um, Now, there's something called the JADE technique, and JADE stands for justify, argue, defend, or explain. And so, avoiding the JADE technique, I think, is very important. Narcissists thrive on keeping you defensive. So, resist the urge to justify or explain your actions, as this gives them more material to manipulate, really. Practice gray rocking. Respond with minimal emotion or minimal information to disengage from their attempts to provoke. Another thing, do not expect empathy, do not expect accountability. One of the most frustrating aspects of dealing with a narcissist is their inability to see their role in a conflict. Recognize that you may never receive an apology or validation and focus on what you can control, your response and your boundaries. Another technique is the broken record technique. When a narcissist tries to derail the conversation or wear you down, repeat your key point calmly and consistently, sorry. I hear you, but I'm going to leave since you are confining TL. Some mantras for conflict resolution are, not everything deserves my attention. I do not need their validation to stand in my truth. Here are some tips on how to argue like a conflict resolution champion. Set the stage with curiosity. Before diving into the conflict, pause and ask yourself, what might the other person's perspective be? Approaching conflict with curiosity rather than defensiveness softens the dynamic. You can try using phrases like, help me understand what you're feeling. Another thing is to use I statements. Instead of saying, you always make me feel, and then you can reframe that with, I feel hurt when you do blank. This shifts the conversation away from blame and towards mutual understanding. Another thing, listen to hear, not respond. Active listening means fully absorbing what the other person is saying without planning your rebuttal, Reflect back what you hear. It sounds like you're feeling blank. Did I get that right? People love that. They want to feel heard. Pause before reacting. When emotions run high, it is tempting to react immediately, but instead we can take a moment to breathe. Responding from a calm state increases the chances of productive resolution. Let's talk a little bit about when to stand your ground, and when to step back for some peace. It's important to distinguish between situations that require holding firm boundaries and those where stepping back creates more peace. It's important to stand your ground when your core values or safety are at stake, you are being disrespected or manipulated, someone is asking you to compromise in ways that harm your well being. And in these situations, you can use assertive yet compassionate language like, I hear you, but I am not comfortable with that. I can't agree to this because it crosses my boundary. You need to step back for peace when the conflict is about ego or control, not substance. The other person is unwilling to meet you halfway and further engage. This will only escalate the situation. Here, disengagement doesn't mean surrender, it means prioritizing your peace. You can try saying things like, let's take some time and revisit this later. I think we both are feeling really tense right now, so let's pause for just a moment. Okay, so let's talk about breaking the cycle. It is important to prioritize connection over being right. So you might want to ask yourself, what matters more? Proving your point, maintaining trust and understanding in the relationship, or, focusing on shared goals rather than personal victories. The aim of an argument and of a discussion should always be progress, not, necessarily victory, winning. We gotta get out of this win-lose kind of mindset. Winning and losing mindset is not very helpful for us. So let's focus more on progress, the future, what the future is going to bring. Another reflection is knowing your patterns and your role in the conflict, especially if it keeps happening. If the same conflict keeps happening, it's time to address the underlying pattern. And this might involve recognizing your own role in the cycle and also openly discussing ways to break it. An example of this can be, I noticed that we keep having the same argument about blank. I want to find a new way to approach it so we can move forward. Committing to repair is the most important part of conflict resolution. Conflict itself isn't the issue, but it is the lack of repair afterward that causes lasting damage. Even if the conversation gets heated, make it a priority to check in and to rebuild trust. Let's not sweep things under the rug. To truly break free from the cycle of unproductive conflict, we must change our mindset about winning. In healthy conflict resolution, the goal isn't about the idea of winning, it is to understand, to connect with the other person, and to move forward. Conflict can be an invitation to grow, both individually and in your relationships. And while it might take practice to apply these tools, every step that you take towards effective communication brings you closer to freedom and harmony. Okay, thank you so much today. This was the presentation that I put together on conflict resolution. Please let me know if this was helpful, or if you would like me to do a part 2. We can get into more detailed observations from the conflicts that you guys are experiencing and things you would like me to talk about. And I'd be happy to create that for you in 2025. So everyone have a great day. I hope that these tools really helped you today. And remember, repair, repair, repair. Repair is the key to the future.